There's a portrait, dark with age, hidden deep in the archives beneath the ruined hall of Château d'Avernis in the north of France. Its colors have faded, yet the subject's eyes remain piercing eyes, almost alive. The woman in the painting is draped in midnight silk, her skin pale as polished ivory, lips bloodless but proud. Below the portrait, a tarnished bronze plate bears only a single word, Isabelle. Few today speak of Lady Isabelle de Avernis, the Duchess of Avernis, though in her time she was whispered of in hushed tones throughout the courts of Europe. Her story was not preserved in official records. It lingers, instead, in personal diaries, stolen correspondences, and the mad scribblings of a physician who vanished in 1712, leaving only a broken vial in a journal soaked in something red. To begin this tale, we must return to the year 1681, when Isabelle was just 17. She was known not for beauty though. She had that in cruel abundance but for a gaze that unsettled even the most seasoned diplomats. Her marriage to the elderly Duke of Avernis, a man nearly 50 years her senior, was arranged. She did not flinch, nor did she weep when he died. Less than a year later, under unfortunate circumstances involving a staircase and a wine-induced slumber, with the Duke buried in the estate hers, Isabelle seemed to stop aging. As decades passed, visitors noted in letters and journals that she remained unchanged. In 1699, an Italian composer who dined at Avernis wrote, "The lady of the house is a marvel. Her face is that of a maiden, but her voice has the weight of centuries." By 1705, rumors began to circle. Servants whispered that Isabelle never slept, that she ate alone, behind locked doors, that strange glass bottles were delivered to her chambers at dawn, delivered by men who never returned. One maid, before she was dismissed and sent to a convent, claimed to have seen the Duchess smear a silver liquid across her skin, cooing in a tongue she could not understand. Then came the physician Dr. Balthazar Renou, a failed academic and alchemist, desperate for recognition. He was summoned to Avernis to treat a mysterious imbalance of the humors that plagued the Duchess. In truth, he was brought for a far more sinister purpose, for by then, Isabelle had begun to change. In Renou's journal, which would later be discovered buried behind the estate's chapel wall, he described her condition in language that wavered between fascination and horror. Her blood is thinner than wine, nearly translucent. Her skin glows, faintly. I have touched her pulse. It beats twice, once in the wrist, once behind the eye. The doctor believed he had uncovered the secret of immortality. He became obsessed, but as he probed further, he discovered something that chilled him to the marrow. Isabelle was consuming mercury. She drank it in tinctures, wore it as a balm, even inhaled it as vapor mercury, the quicksilver, the essence of transformation in ancient alchemy. To her, it was a sacrament, a bridge between body and soul, a way to preserve beauty, to mock death. But the price? Oh, the price was monstrous. The longer she took it, the less human she became, Renou wrote. She laughs without moving her lips. Her reflection trembles in the mirror, as if resisting her shape. I awoke to find her watching me in the dark, though I had locked the door. She does not blink. And still, she insisted it was working. She would host masquerades, where guests wore masks of bone and metal, and at midnight she would descend the grand staircase untouched by time, while those around her withered and coughed into their hank. One nobleman poisoned his own wife after a single glance from Isabelle. Another, barely 16, leapt from the ramparts in despair after she kissed him on the cheek. Yet not all were blind. In 1708, an envoy from the church came, cloaked not as priest, but as inquisitor. Father Grégoire de Saunier, a grim-faced man who had survived the German plague and the siege of Vienna, arrived unannounced. He did not ask questions. He demanded confessions. He was never seen again. And now the rumors turned to fear. The locals spoke of curses, of the Black Virgin that wept blood in the chapel, of a wolf that walked on 2 legs and wore a lady's perfume. Farmers abandoned their land near Avernis. Travelers who passed through left before sundown. The forest thickened, unnatural. Birds flew in silence over the estate. And still, Isabelle remained, ageless, untouched. But Dr. Renou knew. He had seen the tremble in her hand, the faint tremor of her eyelid. He had watched as her teeth began to darken, as her laughter deepened into a rattle. The mercury, while preserving her face, was poisoning everything else. Her organs, her mind, her soul. And so, on a stormlit night in the winter of 1712, he made his decision. He would destroy her. Dr. Renou did not sleep that night. Outside, the wind howled like a choir of drowned voices. The shutters banged. The fire hissed, though no one fed it. Within his chamber, the doctor scrawled frantically into his journal, each letter more unsteady than the last. He was no longer a man of medicine, not even a man of reason. He had become, as he wrote, a witness to the impossible, a prisoner of a living myth wrapped in silk and silver. The plan was simple. Poison for poison. If mercury preserved her, perhaps arsenic would end her. He brewed the mixture in secret, dissolving it into a crimson cordial drink. He knew she took each evening with slices of candied violet, But he hesitated, for Isabelle had changed. Not just in body, but in presence. She had become something, ancient. He saw it in the way shadows clung to her like loyal pets, the way her voice no longer echoed quite right in the stone halls. When she passed, candles flickered, some even guttered out completely. And when she spoke his name, Balthazar, it no longer sounded like a woman calling a man. It sounded like something darker, summoning something old. Still, he pressed on. On the third night of that week, he entered her chambers under the pretense of examining her pulse. She lay upon a chaise draped in black furs, bare-shouldered, her skin dusted with a powder that shimmered unnaturally in the candlelight. The room stank faintly of metal. A crystal decanter of cordial waited nearby. "Is the mixture prepared?" she asked, eyes half. "Yes," he lied. "It is." He poured it into her goblet, his hand shaking. She watched him without blinking. Then, with a smile that split her lips wider than seemed possible, she drank. And nothing happened, not at first. But the next morning, the servants were roused by screams. Not hers, his. They found the doctor in his study alive, but no longer sane. He was crawling on the floor, naked, muttering to the fireplace. In his journal, discovered nearby, the final entry was scrawled in blood rather than ink. She knew I would try. She let me try. And now she is inside me. The estate physician declared him unfit. He was sent to the asylum at St. Fleur, where he starved himself to death after scratching the name Isabelle into every wall of his cell. But Isabelle, she thrived. Or so it seemed. In the years that followed, the chateau closed its gates. Letters from the Avernis estate ceased. The last reported sighting of Isabelle came from a Prussian traveler who claimed to have seen her standing alone in a snowy garden, staring into a frozen fountain. He said her skin was cracking, and then she vanished. The estate was abandoned. Locals say they hear voices, they're still whispers, like someone asking to be remembered. Occasionally, treasure hunters come seeking Mercury vials or forbidden journals. Most return empty-handed. A few never return at all. Yet in 1837, more than a century later, a grave robber named Lucien Gerard broke into a sealed crypt beneath the estate. What he found was not a coffin. It was a glass box, and inside, a woman, young, perfect, sleeping. She had not aged a day. Lucien died 4 months later, blind and raving. His tongue had turned black. To this day, no one knows what became of the glass box. Some say it was taken by a secret order of the church. Others believe it sank in the Seine. But rumors persisted. In 1921, a woman matching Isabelle's description was spotted in a sanatorium in Bavaria, never speaking, but drawing symbols in Mercury with her fingernail. She died in the fire that consumed the building. Or so they claimed. But in 1994, a small art gallery in Marseille acquired an anonymous painting, unsigned, of a woman with pale skin and silver eyes. The gallery owner vanished a week later. His last voicemail was a whisper. "She's looking at me." The painting was destroyed in a flood the following year. Or was it? Paris, autumn, 2006. In a shadowed corner behind the Church of St. where sunlight rarely touches the damp stones, a private collector named Adrien Moreau made an unusual purchase from a Bacali antique dealer. It was an old, leather-bound manuscript. No title, the leather disturbingly soft. Later testing would suggest it was an animal. Inside, the text was written in a strange silvery inkits, characters indecipherable to every linguist. But under the right angle of candlelight, a single Latin phrase glimmered between the lines. Isabelle de Avernis, Malegic, Isabelle of Auvergne. The eternally cursed. To most, it would be little more than a curiosity. To Adrien it was a revelation. He had long been obsessed with the occult aristocracy of old Europe. He believed in forgotten bloodlines and alchemical immortality. And this was confirmation. He began translating obsessively, night after night. But something changed in him. Neighbors would later tell police that they heard laughter at 3 a.m., a woman's laughter from his apartment, though Adrien lived alone. 1 week later, Adrien Moreau disappeared. The police found his door locked from the inside. Blood covered the wooden floor, and carved into the ceiling, written in jagged gouges from human fingernails, was a single sentence. "She never sleeps. She only waits." His body was never found. Scattered clues across centuries in Romania. A sealed crypt under a forgotten monastery has resisted excavation for over 50 years. Every archaeologist sent into its depths developed a mysterious illness: gray skin, erratic heart rhythms, and a slow, irreversible madness. Within its walls are carvings of a crowned woman with liquid metal hair and hollow eyes. In Kyoto, Japan, in 1974, a Buddhist nun woke from a dreamless trance and, using ashen blood, covered her temple walls with a poem in Old French. She had never studied the language. The poem described a woman with hair like molten mirrors and a smile that casts no reflection. The nun died 3 days later from acute mercury poisoning. No source of mercury was ever found. None of these events seemed related, until a professor of demonology at the Sorbonne Emmerich Langlais began to piece them together. His final paper, which never saw publication, was leaked on the dark web shortly after his mysterious death. The manuscript laid out a theory both horrifying and strangely plausible. Isabelle was never merely a noblewoman. She was a host vessel for an ancient intelligence that required human flesh to manifest. Mercury was not her elixir of youth. It was the binding agent, the alchemical glue that held her crumbling vessel together. She wasn't consuming mercury to stay young. She was taking it to keep the body from falling apart. Langlais' last known communication was an email sent to a colleague. It read, "I've seen the pattern. She's not dead. She just changes faces." The colleague died of cardiac arrest 2 days later. His heart was filled with black fluid, thick as oil. A private clinic in Geneva logged an unusual patient. Female, mid-30s, no ID, no fingerprints matched in any. Her skin, pale, almost translucent, her eyes, silver, and her blood, contaminated with mercury at levels high enough to kill any living human instantly. But she lived. She didn't speak for 2 days. She just wrote dozens of pages, symbols, spells, languages, lost to history. One nurse, who attempted to read a single page aloud, suffered a seizure and never recovered full speech. They called her patient I. On the third night, she disappeared. No broken locks, no alarms, no camera footage, just an empty bed and a long smear of silver across the floor, as if someone had glided barefoot through liquid metal. The nurse on duty was found unconscious, whispering over and over. She wasn't sleeping, she was listening. Unconfirmed reports followed. A librarian in Prague claimed to have seen a woman with mirror-like hair reading a 14th century alchemical text, before the entire manuscript turned to dust in her hands. In Cairo, a camera caught a silver-eyed figure walking alone into the desert, her skin glowing faintly under the moon. The footage corrupted minutes later, and in New York, a freelance journalist died of acute metal poisoning after investigating a series of missing-person cases, all victims last seen entering antique shops. In his notebook, one phrase repeated, scratched into the leather cover: "The Lady of Mercury walks again." Final clue: in late 2024, a cryptographer decoding a Vatican codex discovered a single embedded phrase in Latin, buried across 72 folios. Quod fuit, what once was, shall be again. She does not die. She changes. That same night, the researcher went missing. All they found in his apartment was a single silver goblet, still warm to the touch, and a mirror cracked across the center. In its reflection, they say, there was a woman standing in the corner, but the room was empty. Epilogue: some say Isabelle was never a woman at all, that she was a whisper of something older, a spirit, a sickness, a will, bound to mercury like a soul to flesh. She isn't hunting anymore. She doesn't have to. She simply waits for another body, another age, another name, and in the shadows of old Europe, in the quiet corners of forgotten libraries, she is remembered, and sometimes, when the candlelight hits just right, she remembers you. Fade to black, whispered voice. Don't drink from the silver cup. It's not wine.